we're back on a mic. Thank you. Yep, right there. Thanks. Yeah, you bet. Enjoy, guys. So Sarah's bringing this piece out of the oven. You can see how hot and soft it is. As this piece is cooling down, you can start to see the color change a little bit on there. So now is heating up a tool and heating up the bottom of her piece. She's putting a hole in this. Sometimes we use a power drill to do this, sometimes an ice pick. We're getting close to the point where our guest artist now is going to separate this piece of glass from her blowpipe. So she's just kind of getting ready to shape that. You can see her warming up the neck, making a neck piece. She's keeping it nice and warm right now, so it'll be nice and pliable. But she'll use a big pair of tweezers to narrow that neck down. And then when she's ready to transfer, part of this, the beauty of this art is it looks like these folks are not communicating, but they all are keeping an eye on what part of the process the other artist is on. So Sarah is working on a piece of glass to pull over to pick up Now's piece of glass. So they're going to transfer that piece of glass onto another stick, another pipe, and Now is going to use this really simple technique. She's going to use those same pinchers at the neck of this, add a drop of cold water, which will cause a real fragile weak point in the glass, and then she can just tap the pipe and this piece will snap off cleanly and carefully. So here she goes with the droplets of water. She'll do a small tap. That's how fragile glass is. But now she's done that transfer, she can work on the other end of the piece. So a piece of glass isn't always just on one blowpipe. And you can, so if you weren't here earlier, now told us that she was going for a sort of sunset effect on this particular piece. So she has a gather of blue and a gather of pink on this, and it'll have a nice color fade on her finished piece of glass. But if you've been sitting here, you'll know that she started this with a small clear gather, then added a small color. Sarah assisted her by making essentially a goblet. They put another piece inside of that. All these different parts to melt together and stretch out and blow out to create the piece that is in her dreams. But we are still working on the ripple. So over here on this white stanchion, we're still doing the big water droplets. And then now adheres the small water droplet patterns to that after the piece has annealed and is cooled down. So now is making a water droplet effect. So she's reached into the ends of that piece of glass and she's shaping and stretching out so she gets that perfect droplet at the top. She knows exactly the shape she's going for. And she'll just use these tweezers until she can get that absolute perfect shape on the top, and then she'll break off that extra piece and it will just end up on the floor. And we cannot reuse that glass. It's been colored. It's just scrap glass. That's it. So we have a little more shaping to do after this, and the process after the shaping will be to transfer that to the annealing ovens. That droplet will sit in the annealing oven for about 30 hours, come down to room temperature very slowly so we don't crack it. Powers is helping now out. Even though she has that fiberglass arm sleeve on, it's still very hot. So having an assistant that will help you keep the heat off your body is really going to help with fatigue and just, keeps your skin from blistering. So we can use a lot of different tools to manipulate this glass. So now it's just working on that perfect tip on this droplet. You can get it right the first time, or it can take you several times. But she's grabbing with pliers and tweezers and all kinds of things to manipulate those shapes. Now's doing her final shaping with a pad of wet newspaper and her tweezer tools. Okay, so we're getting ready to transfer this glass. Powers is over here getting dressed in his safety clothing because this piece is really hot and we're going to put it in the annealing oven. The annealing oven is also very hot. Powers is going to gear up in some fireproof clothing. He is going to protect his face and he's going to wear fireproof gloves. He's actually going to handle this piece of glass and hand carry it. The transfer process is one of my favorite processes. It's deceptively easy, just using the tweezer tool and a droplet of water to break off the punty. But also, I just think it's so fascinating that you're making a piece of art and your hands never touch this piece of art until it's done. Powers' hands are sort of touching it right now. But he's carefully handling this over to an oven to cool this down. Excellent work, team. I don't know if you noticed right before that happened, you don't hear a lot of communication between the team on the floor. There's a little bit of chatter that happens, but it's loud and hot down here. A lot of the communication that happens between these artists is a nod or a real simple wave hand gesture. You have to be friends and be kind and be paying attention all the time. The most important person here right now is Nao Yamamoto. She's our guest artist, and we're all working to support her vision. Powers works with her a lot and understands her communication style. We've drawn pictures on the floor here to help communicate to all of us what we're trying to accomplish during this residency. And Nao is really leaning on the rest of the team here to help support her. So if she needs something, it's our job to be anticipating what is coming next in her artistic process, what she's going to need. Is she going to need a new fresh gather of glass? Is she going to need shielding from heat? Is she going to need to transfer this piece to a new pipe? These are all things that we're all anticipating and supporting her in doing. Right now, Now is using pieces of glass on the outside of her ripple piece here on this droplet. This is all beaded on the outside with glass beads. Those are the beads that Now is currently making on these white fireproof plates. We had a big, large cane of glass that Now snapped into smaller pieces, and she's going to slump them on this hot plate. We'll put it in the oven or the glory hole for a few minutes, like putting a chocolate chip cookie or a chocolate chip in an oven. Just kind of softens and slumps it down. And then we'll be left with glass beads for the outside of the ripple piece. This is kind of how the team will take a break and communicate. We have chalk everywhere. Gabe and Now are having a conversation. I don't know about what, but they're showing each other how they're going to make this process work. Hi, guys. Powers is here in the light blue t-shirt. You can see on the end of his punty, he has a gather of red glass. We don't use all red glass to make a red glass item. We just use a little bit of color, and we use clear glass, creates this illusion of a lot of glass, but you're really just seeing a little bit of colored glass with a lot of clear glass around it. That was a fancy whisk broom that we use sometimes in this process. On the other side of the shop here, Chelsea and Gabe are working on Now's sun piece. So Gabe and Chelsea are over there working on these individual pieces that we're going to build together and create a giant sun from. So these are about actual size. Excellent. How are you? Now's using the slab table. She's blowing a little bubble of air in the ends of her pipe and using the table to help shape her piece of glass and also to cool it down a little bit. The sun, it'll be about that size, yep. The bubble steps are actually, here's one part of it right here. Um, these are actually, oh, the annealing oven's open. So you can see in this oven over here, we've had, talking about the bubble steps right now, another of Now's projects. We've been working on bubbles all week. So we've had them in the annealing oven over here to cool down really slowly. The oven is open now. So that's something that we'll be able to start assembling in the next day or two. But also behind the scenes, we do have welding capabilities here. We have cold shop capabilities. So what you're seeing out here is just one part of the hot shop. There's a whole behind the scenes with all the big furnaces and all that kind of stuff. But this is where the good, exciting stuff happens. Some of these pieces are going to leave with Now. These are her personal pieces. A lot of artists will come work in residency here because this is top of the line furnaces. These furnaces are pretty large. And if you can see, we have a shield that we use just to help the glass blower not get so warm. But we have a capability here that a lot of smaller shops don't. You can kind of see there's a layers of doors on these glory holes. So we can actually open them up. If the pieces get larger and larger, we have more room to be able to allow that. So it's pretty fun to come use all the fancy stuff sometimes. The tool that Now is using is like a wooden spatula. We keep them in a bucket of water right behind her. She's using that tool to help shape her piece of glass. This is a piece of wet newspaper that she's using. It's actually a very all glass floors use it. It's not uh, something that just Now uses. Well, let me know if there's anything you want to know about. Yeah. The woman at the bench with the red belt, that's Now Yamamoto. And so she's kind of communicated with us these art pieces on the floor. That's kind of how she's sharing her vision with us. So we're making this sun piece, bubble staircase, and then we're making actually these droplets. So she has a whole series of those. That is a several on these little white cookie sheets. That's where she's slumping the small pieces that she'll apply on the outside of her droplets. This team over here, Gabe and Chelsea, they're pretty much just working on like these pieces here. So this is they're about to put one in the oven right now. So they use special fire tongs, stick it on that wooden tray, and put it in that oven. It's smoking hot, but it's going to cool down for a long time. And then we'll use those pieces to create that sun. And can you on that stanchion? Yep. Each piece is one of these. So this is almost actual size. Yep. And so we've been working on bubbles. They've been in the annealing oven, but we just opened them. So that oven across the wall there, like this one we keep closed because it's going to slowly cool down with things in it. We had all the bubbles in there and they've been cooling down for 70, no wait, 30 hours maybe, something like that. But yeah, so then we can start assembling those into a cool bubble staircase. She's right now working on this teardrop. Mm-hmm. Um, yeah. Oh, so a lot of things will just look orange because it's that hot. Yeah, yeah, everything looks so orange. And it's literally molten. Yeah, but color even will blow out to orange because it's so hot. So it's hard to see color. As this piece gets a little bit bigger, hard So we'll drill little holes in here, either before it goes into the healing oven or during the cold work process, so that it can be wired in. Yeah, it's nothing fancy. Yeah. This guy is Nick. He's walking around in this outfit. He's working on an oven right now. We just started a fresh batch of glass. So he's kind of working on that. We dumped it in earlier today. It's going to cook for about 24 hours to get it to 2100 degrees. So he's the batch babysitter right now. He'll come in, add some more to that, stir it around a little bit, keep an eye on it so it's ready for us to work with tomorrow. So now is over here. She's working on the little beads of water droplets that are going to go on the outside of her big droplet. So she's broken off pieces of clear glass off a rod of glass. She's hand putting them on a fireproof cookie sheet, and then we'll put them in the oven for a minute, and they'll slump down into a nice organic soft droplet shape that she's looking for. So yep, just clear pieces of glass. Yep. Those are tubes of the batch. I'm going to show you what that looks like. How's your vision? Can you catch this if I toss it? Ooh. Oh, it's fine. It's oh, got it. It looks like a mothball. That is we get our batch in several different ways. Yeah, it looks like. Do you want to see this? Oh, we got it. Got it? All right. Yeah, so that's what is in those big cylinder tubes. You can pass that around or hold on to it. That's one of the ways we get our glass batch. It looks like it's white. It's actually, it will melt into a clear batch of glass. We also, depending on where we get it and when we get it, it can come in kind of like big chunky shards. Sometimes it comes in a paper bag, like a giant bag of sand, kind of. We just toss it in the furnace. The paper incinerates immediately into nothing, and then we're just left with a big batch of glass. So these furnaces all are full of clear glass. We use color very conservatively. You can see Powers here in the light blue shirt. He just did a little gather of glass, of colored glass. That little bit of color will really explode on a larger piece. You really can be very conservative with color, and we want to be conservative with color. Color is really expensive. It comes, we order it sort of in rods like this, usually more of a solid color. And when we want to use a color, we will just chip some pieces off of it. We can put it in a little smaller furnace to just melt the amount of glass we need. Or we can do things like grind it down to like coarse salt or fine sand, spread it on a table, and you can roll your hot gather of glass over that to collect color. You can also make patterns that way. If you've ever seen cool pieces of glass that look like someone wove it like a blanket, you can draw with that powdered glass on a table and then pick it up with your clear glass and manipulate it from there. So there's a lot you can do. Pieces that we are finished with, I guess you would say, if we're not working it actively, it's going in this annealing oven. So over here, number 4, this oven across the back wall. We have another oven over here. That's number 1. The doors are open. We have to put glass in an oven to cool it down very carefully and very slowly. Glass has a lot of stress in it, and if you just let it cool down, like if we do sometimes leave shards of glass on the floor here, but occasionally you'll just hear it pop and explode. It just cools down too quickly and it's ruined. So we are very careful to cool it down so that all the effort we put into that piece is preserved. We're going to see something going in the annealing oven right here. Over by oven number 4, Gabe's over there. He's working on some of the rays of the sun. He's going to pick it up with his special fireproof tongs and slide it onto that wooden board. That is going to go now in the oven. There's like a fiberglass blanket in there he'll lay it down on, and that will go in and cool down. That's what they just did. Yep. So these actually go pretty quickly, so you'll see several of these. Here's kind of an example of what Gabe and Chelsea are working on. They're over there in the corner diligently producing all of these rays for the sun. So that's a 1 or 2 person job. It's a small enough piece that you can really manage it without too much fatigue or stress on your body. But they will work as a team of 2. They'll want to heat the end up. They'll keep this part on their punty, and then to get this sort of shape, they'll use torch work or the flamethrower to heat it up, and then they'll pinch it with a tool and kind of make a cool shape. They also will use gravity to help them make really organic shapes a lot, especially in the smaller pieces. Chelsea is over here. He's the guy with the blonde bun, and Gabe is right behind him. You'll see them making several of these, but sometimes they swing them around. They're using gravity and force to stretch something out or to give it a cool organic shape. So their team is working together. Chelsea's sitting on the bench right now, and Gabe is his assist. So Gabe's going to give Chelsea a little help by giving a couple puffs of air to grow the shape that they're working on. So now in the red belt, we're gonna keep working on. We're doing a whole series of the ripples. The rays, just Chelsea and Gabe over here. Those 2 guys are working on the rays right now. We've been working on bubbles for a while, but now we're doing the ripple, the droplets. So that is what Now is working on. Now is sitting on the bench with the red belt. So this is exactly what we're working on. It's it's part of a larger scope of a bigger project, but individually these are known as ripple series, bubble stairs, and the steel sun. Um, I'm not sure now, do you have a plan on assembling these all together into? No, not intended to. Yeah, but not all, you're not doing all of this. Oh, okay. Okay. So these will all be in a show together, likely here. But now lives in Seattle. She also lives in Southern California, travels back to Japan a lot. She does cool residency work for people who can afford to have her do a fancy thing for their own home. But she also does her own shows and installations. So we'll host her at the Museum of Glass and showcase all of this for her. Yeah, you know what, let me give you, I have some of Now's business cards also. I can share that with you. What, I'll just, oh, that's right. You're welcome. Okay, so that question was, are all of the pipes the same size? They're not. We do have some smaller pipes that we work with. To get something that huge, it's muscles. We don't have a much bigger blowpipe that we use. You just have to have a good team. We have a lot of assists that we have. Like you'll notice when we go to the glory hole, we have that nice little carrier that is on like a train track. We can slide it with our feet to get that big heavy piece of glass. Right now, that's maybe like an 8-pound piece of glass that she has on the end. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, when it will be that big today before it goes into the annealing oven. It will still be on that same size punty. Yeah, it's just like you are. Yeah, you just. It's part of the job. Like you have really strong shoulders. You get a lot of shoulder injuries in this job actually because it is a lot of stress. But we do have a lot of tools that help support that to take some of that pressure off. Right now, yeah, and also like having that all that weight on one end of a pole is difficult also. Right now, Ms. Yamamoto might only have 8 pounds on the end of that, so it's not too much for her to handle on her own. But when it gets bigger, not only is the weight going to be an issue, but the heat. There's so much more surface space to it. So that's when you really rely on your team. She'll do a couple more gathers, so yeah. I mean, she might get up to like a 12 or 15 pound piece, but I bet 12 or 15 pounds. Yeah. So what they're doing right now is a color fade. Sarah, who is at the glory hole right now, has been working on sort of a goblet shape. She worked on this. You can see there's a little bit of a red gather at the bottom. And now is back at the glory hole with her piece. And these are going to be fitted together. So they're not talking to each other, but they both know that they want this glass to be the same temperature. They have to have the same temperature at the same time. So even though doesn't seem like there's a lot of communication, they really know what they're doing. Now just got another clear gather of glass. She's slumping off the extra, and she'll take it. Right now she's taking it over, I don't know the name of this thing. It's called like a bathtub or something. It's really hot in that oven. So she is actually just cooling down her pipe so she can handle it a little bit better. Her bare hands are touching that. So you'll notice that it is a real dance between Sarah, Powers. This is a really cool process. We're going to put a couple of drops of water on the neck, give it a slight tap, and that is broken off. It will. So another fancy tool we have is this box. Now isn't quite tall enough to lift to do that on her own, so we'll use a little step stool. Powers is here helping with that. If you notice, he warmed his gloves up by the glory hole before he touched that. It's because this glass is so, yep, exactly. So that's how that's so cool that it breaks off the punty like that. You just put a drop of water on that neck, and it's a slight tap. But you have created such a weakness in the glass right there with that cool water. It's not even cool water, actually. It's just cooler than the glass. So now this is a time when now's getting a little bit of a break. We're making Powers do the hard work. Yeah. And then we can use this steel table for several different things. We used a little bit there for gravity. This can help now shape the table, or shape on the table, and also the table is a little cooler. So it's firming up the glass a little bit, so she's not working with a glob of honey on a stick. It's more Play-Doh-y. But you'll notice that there's always a team around her. We're always checking in. Like we're all here spotting her, ready to help her out with whatever she needs. And also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but we all wear cotton here. We all have our hair pulled back. Yeah. It's warm in here, but if like we can't wear polar fleece or something, if you were to get near radiant heat like that, it would melt right into your skin. So if there was an accident and you walked into hot glass, at least cotton would burn off, and you would be in the emergency room. Yeah, but you're not going to have plastic melted into your body. So, yep. So we're careful. We're all very careful with each other. We're all very aware. Powers is like the silent energy behind now. You'll notice that he's, doing all the little things to help support her, doing some of the heavy lifting. So over here on the right side, Chelsea is, he's the guy with the beard. He's just putting something in the oven. Chelsea and Gabe are working on those sun rays. In that little cookie sheet on that table is some frit, we call it. It's like sanded glass. We've just ground it down. So they can add a little yellow to these pieces by rolling their clear glass in sprinkles, kind of. And then they'll put it back in the oven and it will kind of melt together, and then they'll have a really cool piece of glass to work with. So right here at the center of the shop now is our working artist, Sarah's giving her an assist by keeping heat off her arm with that wooden paddle. Powers is doing some of the heavy lifting for now that it's getting bigger and she's getting more tired. Okay, so on the droplet, that texture, those are individual pieces of glass. Those, if you look at this table, there's kind of those white cookie trays there. Now had a big cane of clear glass, and she just broke it down into snips and then put each individual piece on that cookie sheet, and then we're going to stick it into the oven and let it heat up so they kind of slump down into like an organic droplet shape. And then she has a process after the droplet comes out of the annealing oven. She actually hand applies every single one of those droplets. They're representing like when you drop something in the water and the ripples it makes, and sometimes they spread apart or interact with one another, and so it's all sort of dependent on what she wants. She is the artist. Cool. Awesome. I'll be here. Are you guys curious about anything? Any questions I can answer? The team on the hot shop floor right now, the woman in the red belt at the bench, this is now Yamamoto. She's our guest artist in residency. We're working on this screen piece that's on the stanchion over here. Now is using some newspaper that she has soaked in water to help shape the end of this. Sarah is here on the end of the blowpipe, giving her a couple breaths to help shape this piece. So now is using a couple techniques here. She used a little bit of her breath, a little bit of gravity. Sarah is giving a little bit of breath to this piece. Powers in the blue shirt is helping roll this piece consistently, so we're working with gravity to help shape. So we're going to take it back to the oven for another warm up. Here's a real easy technique that can help because this glass is so soft right when it comes out. Now's looking for a really organic droplet shape. Swinging and holding a piece of glass like that and letting weight and gravity pull it and shape it really organically is a cool technique. So what we're going to get ready to do now is transfer this piece to another pipe. So Sarah has gone over. She has a pipe. She's going to cool it down. She's going to get a gather on the end of her pipe. And then we're going to attach it to the end of this droplet here. We'll break it off so we can work the other end of that piece of glass. So we use a lot of interesting tools here. Now's working with air, fire, gravity, newspaper, wooden paddles. But all that time, nobody's hands actually ever touch this thing. It's all tools. So we're doing a little shaping. Sarah is over here getting us ready for the transfer. These pieces of glass also need to be at the right temperature for this transfer. So even though they're not communicating with one another, they're both hyper aware of what the other person's doing. Now is heating up an ice pick. She's torching the bottom of this to get some heat. She's putting a little air hole in here. That's going to help us with the transfer process. You can start to see the color fade on this a little bit also. We used 2 different gathers of colored glass, a small amount each time. And if you were here earlier, we made a goblet, filled the other goblet, kept growing and stretching this out. So we had this really cool looking color fade on it. Now it's giving it some real consideration. So if you're paying attention, you can probably read the body language on the floor here. That's pretty important for everyone working on the floor. You want to know when someone's going to be walking around with a hot piece of glass on the end of a pipe. You want to know if you're supporting the artist, you want to read their body language so you can anticipate needs. This is the glass transfer process. Sarah is bringing a gather over. Now's guiding it onto the bottom of her piece. She's going to use these tools on the neck of the piece that's attached to her pipe. She's going to use a couple droplets of water to cool the glass down quickly to create a fragile point. And she'll use a very tiny tap to disengage one piece of glass from one pipe to the other. It's a pretty amazing process, actually. This is where the ballet really happens. There's the droplet of water that Now's putting on this tiny tap, and it's broken off. So that could never have happened without Powers and Sarah in that assist. So they were reading her body language. They've been through this process with her. They're all working together as a team. Now's communicating what she wants to accomplish, and the rest of the team is working with her to make that happen. This part of the process is where Now is going to make the perfect top to this droplet. So Sarah's here working this piece, rolling it back and forth so we're not slumping one direction or another. It's still warm and malleable enough where you can see Now is sticking her tools in there to help move it around a little bit. She's testing to see how cool it is by tapping it like that. Sarah's going to put it back in the oven to warm it up. That will make it soft again so that now can work the ends of it. She'll use some of her tools. The tool that she has in her hand is a really one of, or maybe the most common glass blowing tool. You can use it for a lot of different things. It does heat up, but these glass blowers really tolerate that very well. And you'll notice that when she's holding the tool, she's using both ends of the tool. Even the back hinge part, she'll use that for tapping or for flattening something out. The other end, she has pointed tips to help do fine shaping. So we'll see her open up the end of this, pull and shape until she gets that perfect water droplet tip. But you can see Powers is standing in the back. He's ready with a paddle, a heat shield. Sarah's bringing this out of the oven. Now is prepared with her fiberglass sleeve. Powers is helping keep the heat off of her hand so she can keep working. Sarah's rolling the pipe to make sure that we're not slumping or losing shape. And now we'll just keep communicating back to her support team. Put this back in the fire for a couple of minutes. But Sarah knows what she's doing. She knows what temperature or what exactly she's looking for before she pulls it out. She knows what she wants that to look like for now to be able to work with it. Now she's using a little bit of air. Her tweezers, she's doing a little pulling. And when she has this just like she likes it, she'll snap that little umbilical cord off the top of it and make it perfect. Inside the furnace is 2100 degrees. It takes us about 24 hours to cook up our batch to that temperature. And that's the temperature we can work with it. We use natural gas. Actually, if AV is up there, can you show us a slide in a sec? So you notice Sarah's putting that back in the glory hole. She has a tool. She's using her foot right now to roll that track back and forth. That track is supporting her pole. And also just makes things a lot more simple to work with so you're not carrying all this weight on your shoulders. Now is using wet newspaper to shape while she's pulling. She's pulling into her perfect shape. You can see that newspaper is smoking and kind of catching on fire. That's fine. That's how it works. We have a team that takes care of her, so she doesn't really need to worry about that. We're aware of that sort of stuff, so we'll make sure that we're squirting water on that for her so she's not holding a handful of fire. Or she can take care of herself, I guess. So you can see over here on the other side of the shop, Courtney's over there. That little white cookie sheet is like a fireproof cookie sheet. All the pieces on the cookie sheet are pieces of clear glass that now broke off of a cane of glass. And we're slumping them in the oven to create sort of a soft droplet of water, organic look. And then now we'll apply those at the end of this process. So she's working on the droplet of water now. We're also working on the individual droplets of water, and then those will all come together as one piece later on. So you can see Courtney is going to bring this tray into the glory hole over there. He's going to let it sit for a second. And then when he pulls it out, the steel fork that he's using will be red hot. That's how hot it is in those ovens. Also, while Sarah's at the glory hole, you might notice there is a little shield that comes across that helps us protect us from the heat. There's a little window in there that helps with eye fatigue. So you can still kind of see what's going on in there, but you're getting a little relief at the same time. So as this piece gets a little bit bigger and has more surface area, Powers is going to step in, let Now focus on her piece of art, while Powers focuses on supporting the artist. It's also probably really important to say that everyone on this team is an artist in their own right and has their own extensive collections of art. They have their own showings. They participate in Vetri Gallery. Yeah, they blow glass all day and then go home and blow glass. That's how much they like it. So you can kind of see as we're working this piece, the different color fading on it. We use a couple different gathers on this piece. The piece that we have over here on the white etagere, it looks mirrored. We used like a gold leaf, but mirrored, or metallic rather, to get that sort of effect. So we're not using that right now at the bench. We're just using some color. And this piece is finished. So you can see Powers over here. He's over there gearing up. He's going to get ready to handle this piece of glass. So he's getting his safety uniform on. He is going to put on big fiberglass gloves because we're actually going to break this piece off the punty right into his hands. So even at this process, Powers will warm his hands up in front of the oven to get those mitts ready to catch this droplet that's going to come off the end of the punty. Same exact process. Now it's going to create a little neck. She's going to use her tweezers to drop a couple droplets of water to create a real fragile point in the glass. And then she'll use the end of her tweezers to lightly tap on her punty to drop that. But Powers is here. We're all counting on him to catch this piece of glass as it drops off. It's going to be a really light tap, you guys. There's your droplet of water. And that's the tap. So we're done. Powers is taking this little baby over to the garage. Or to the annealing oven, sorry. We're going to leave that in the oven overnight. Glass has a stress to it. If we didn't cool it down really, really slowly, it would explode. So you can see actually here, we do let pieces of glass cool down on the floor. You can see the pieces that Na was working on earlier that we just sort of snipped off. Those will sit on the floor there. Still, we don't want to be stepping on broken glass or... So Powers is at the furnace getting a nice gather here. Yeah, you bet, you guys. Hey, Tacoma team. Who, Gabe?
Hey, Gabe Feenan. Gabriel.
Hey, Gabe. So this woman bought some martini glasses around here, made by somebody local, and there's an M stamped in the bottom. Where did you see them? On this guest over here. She bought them locally here. Okay. In space, probably. Yeah. In space? That's what I was thinking. Yeah, let me see it. Does she have them? place in Point Defiance. You can picnic with your dog and have like a full deal. Are you Tomaroma on Instagram or what's?
Instead of handle.
I never know what to say, so sometimes I say handle.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, well, what's your Instagram name? And then the kids were like, that's cool. Yeah.
I was at a social media thing recently at Matriarch,
Alma mater.
Alma Mater.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so it was a panel of people who are kind of social media savvy,
Yeah.
and the gal who was the MC, she said, I've always said handle, but my 15-year-old son over here, all the kids apparently say at. What's your at?
Okay,
So
so
who
I've
what
heard
are they gonna?
you can at me, blah,
Oh,
blah, blah. But what's your at?
yeah.
All right. I'll
Who
put
knows?
that on there.
The precincts
Yeah.
may already passed.
Yeah. I know that. Cool. It's hard to keep up on
Yeah,
all of that.
which I'm sure they listen to.
Yeah. 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 Who knows? Exactly. Yeah, well, cool. Yeah, I think today's probably the vibe. It's probably, again, the baby piece. Thursday is for a fundraiser, and Joe did have a mobile hot shop he would take to events and
Yeah.
things like that.
Okay.
So I'm
Well,
guessing.
I'll ask him and say,
Yeah.
does this look like your stuff? I could send him a real picture
Yeah.
with
Oh yeah. Yeah.
make
No,
sure before I
yeah. Maybe he'll donate a
randomly
couple
tag.
like the kids too hard to read pieces he did. See you on the Instagram.
Yeah.
On the gram, probably,
On the
right?
ground.
Hi, friends. Thanks for coming back.
Put those in the oven. Do they need to be used right away?
The ovens?
The little pieces?
Nope. They don't need to be used. All the little individual pieces, they don't need to be used right away. Um, and those are small enough that they can cool down. It's warm enough over here next to the ovens, or there's not a lot of surface area, and just the shape of them naturally builds in the tension surface that it needs so they don't explode. But nope, they'll sit around for a little while, and
So will she use those today?
not today. So part of her process, it's just us in here. So if you, oh, sit wherever you like. Oh, you know what? Just right in the center, and then we also have screens you can pop in and off of. This is our artist in residency. Her name is now Yamamoto. She lives in Seattle and spends a lot of time in Southern California and Japan. And today we've been working on part of her series. It's this water droplet there. We've been working on those today. And then Courtney over here and Gabe have been working on some other pieces that look like this. They're making these smaller sun rays we're kind of building. So pieces like that. We're building this big sun. So this is about actual size. We'll make a bunch of those, wire them together to create a big sun. These guys over here, Courtney and Gabe, are working on those, and now is working on these. We're making the actual droplet in 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, depending. And then that goes into the annealing oven overnight to really very slowly cool down. And then it will be ready for now to put the individual pieces on. So we're also hand making those on those white cookie sheets. Now is snipped off pieces of clear glass off a cane of glass, and we're slumping them down. I have some samples. So she kind of snapped them off here. Yeah. And then we are putting them in the oven. So they just they're not melting, but they're slumping down into a nice organic droplet. Yep, they'll be just like that. Yep, really smooth and round. And then that's part of Now's process is later on she'll go through and create the ripples on her piece. She's pretty young, and she's single, so if you know any young men, she might be looking. She's a darling. She's been an artist since a really young age, but she did go to college just for glass art. Graduated in 2011 in Japan, and then has been traveling here. She's been living here for about the last 7 years. Yeah. Hi, guys. I'll find out for you. How much of this work is going to be done by Sunday by the time her residency is over?
I'd say a good chunk of it, yeah. But I mean, I think she's gonna have to make a lot of those.
The bubble stairs?
Yeah, but I mean, the glass parts will be made, but not
Not
the
the
rest.
steel?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
She'll
So
have to
then
do that at a
you'll
later
assemble
date.
that later.
She'll
Now's
do
going to
that
take it.
sometime at her studio, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I
Cool.
mean, people are like, "Oh, where can I see the finished thing?"
And
And
you're like,
I
I
always
don't know.
tell them
Yeah.
about the artist Instagram.
Yeah.
It's a good place to see that.
Thank you. So we will be finished here. While Now is in residency, we're going to be working on all these pieces for her larger ultimate installation, but that installation will be assembled at her own home private studio. But if you follow her on Instagram, you'll see the completed pieces, and we also intend to have her back for an installation in our gallery, so you could see that here also. So for the couple of you guys that are just joining us, this is Now Yamamoto. She is our artist in residency. She's the young woman at the bench wearing the red belt. Today we're working on, currently we're working on this droplet piece that's on the white etagere. And we're creating the droplet itself here in the studio, and the rest of the ripples will be applied later. This is a really exciting part of the process right here. We're getting close to getting this done. So Now has a support team with her. Sarah is over here in the blue shorts. She's getting a gather of glass right now. We're going to transfer this water droplet shape from the pipe that it's on to another pipe. And you might wonder how we're going to do that. Sounds crazy, but it is a really incredibly simple process and a fascinating one. Right now, we're using a flame, a torch, a lamp to warm up the bottom of Now's piece. She's going to use a tool like an ice pick. She's going to warm that up, create a little hole in the bottom of this piece. And her assistant will help her with a gather of glass to stick on the end of this. So for a couple minutes, there will be 2 pieces of pipe on this one piece of glass. And we're going to break it off one piece and let it stick to the other piece. In order to do that, we'll use like these big metal tongs, create a skinny neck, and then now we'll take a couple drops of water and make a weak point. She'll drop the water on the neck of the glass. That will cool it down and make it really fragile. And then she can just lightly tap the glass and it will come right off the stick. So you can see how fantastic Now's team is. She has a couple of her teammates in here. They're both working to help make this happen for her. This isn't something that she can do by herself. She has Powers, the guy in the light blue shirt. He's helping her, and Sarah's helping her. So Sarah is going to put this hot piece of glass on the bottom of this droplet. Now is going to help guide that on by using her tools to get it just where she wants it. But right now she's instructing her assistants to get those pieces of glass to the right temperature so they will stick together just right and not fall off or break. So this is pretty tricky. Sarah's got it on there, and now Sarah and Powers have to work carefully together to roll this at the same time in the same direction. Now is using, and sometimes she uses the flat hinge part of that, little droplet of water there. Now she'll just make a nice teeny tiny tap, snapped it right. So Powers is helping her right now. This is a pretty big piece of glass with a large surface area fully, so we're not losing some slump to gravity. Are you guys curious about anything? Any questions I can answer?
The surface is extremely hot. Does it stay hot for a long time?
The piece of glass?
Yeah.
It cools down really quickly. When you see it come right out of the oven, it's really orange
Yeah.
because it's so hot. It's 2100 degrees in the oven. Once you pull out of there, um, it's still warm back there, and it is cooling way down. But like most glass blowers don't have enough air, and like you'll like for a while. You're just rotating and that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, it's very hot. It's not when you are first pulling it out. It's a little thicker than honey, and then it becomes more malleable. So you can pinch and pull and stretch at it, but it's more of like silly putty
Okay.
at this point. But there is a really there is one point where it will cool down enough that it will cause the glass to crack. So you're always kind of paying attention, taking it back to the oven to keep it at a temperature that you can keep working and shaping. It is important to factor in the time. And you're really, I can't say enough how important it is to have a thoughtful, generous team working with you. There's a lot of communication that happens before this. Now had a vision. She's trying to execute a particular plan. And our job is to help support her in any way. And there are a lot of common glass blowing practices, but it's our job to really anticipate what now might need, read her body language. A lot of things are, just a quick wave. That might mean step away, or this might mean back in the oven. But you have to be alert and participating all the time, because now might ask you for just a little puff of air, but you have to be ready. She might never ask for it. She might, but you're working against gravity and time and heat and the lack of heat. So you need to be on your game and really preparing. So another thing you might notice is we're all wearing cotton. It is careful, like in a surgery environment, you wouldn't want to bump somebody who has a scalpel in their hand. Here, we all want to be very careful. The person with the glass in their hand is the most important person in the whole shop. The rest of us always have our eyes on that hot piece of glass, and it's our job to avoid it. The artists can't be looking around. There's a lot of other things for them to be focusing on. So if something were to happen and the artist were to move around and you got swept by a hot piece of glass, even if it came near you, it would, just the radiant heat can burn your clothes. So for that reason, cotton, it will incinerate immediately. You'll just have terrible, tragic skin burns, but it won't melt your clothes into your skin like maybe a polar fleece jacket would, or polyester pants. So we all make sure our hair is pulled back. You're not leaning forward. It's not just the fire. It's the radiant heat is intense. He is protecting her with those paddles. So now has that yellow sleeve that she's wearing is like a fiberglass protection sleeve. As this piece gets larger, there's more surface area to radiate that heat, so she'll need to be more and more protected. But yeah, Powers, it's his job to make sure his lady is taken care of. So one of the tools that she uses, she has a pad of wet newspaper that she just picked up right there. It's literally today's newspaper. We just soak it in a 5-gallon bucket of water. It is a really great tool. It's affordable. It's malleable. It's insulating. It will probably smoke and catch on fire here in a second. And that's something now is the most important person here. So she'll drop that pad down. And if it's on fire, Powers will grab something and extinguish it for her. She's got other things to be working on. So she couldn't be doing this if it weren't for Sarah and Powers helping her out. So we're just finishing this piece. So if you notice, there wasn't a lot of conversation about this, but Powers knows to anticipate this. We're about to break this finished droplet off of this pipe. Powers is over here. He's gearing up in his fancy green jacket. He has face protection. He's going to put on some fiberglass mitts. Because temperature is so important, he'll actually take his mittens over to the glory hole and warm those up. Because his whole job now, this all depends on Powers, he is going to catch this as it breaks off the punty. So He's getting ready with warm mitts, so he's not going to catch this piece of glass with a mitt that's the wrong temperature and cause it to explode or create a fissure in it. He is making sure that he's perfectly prepared to support this piece of art that they've been working on. And he'll take it and carry it over to our annealing oven. It's going to go in this top load oven. And we'll set it in there and let it cool down for about 24 hours. But now it's going to use that same really cool process. She's going to use her tweezer tools to create a little neck piece. Then she's going to use a couple of droplets of water to cool down that tiny little area. So she's getting it nice and hot. When you add droplets of water, it's going to create she's got the water droplets on there now, creates a weakness. She's going to tap lightly. Bing. We've broken it off, and now Powers is taking it over to the annealing oven. We're going to let it sit in there. There's like a fiberglass blanket for that to take a nap on for a while. And that's it. We park it in there, come work on the rest of it later. Nice work, team. That one is pretty true to color that we just put in the annealing oven. It's cooled down enough that you could kind of see the representation. This particular green one, that one was made with a little different process. You guys ever seen like gold foil before? That's copper. Copper foil. So it's paper thin. Looks like that. Just pound it out as thin as possible. We have a special box so there's no air blowing around. This will blow. It weighs nothing. But you set it up in the box, and then now you use this glass gather to roll over that and pick up these pieces of metal to create a cool metallic effect like that. No. Metallic effect like that is coming from the mirroring, which is a cold process. Oh, you mirrored that in cold work? Yeah, like I put the chemicals and shake it. That's the mirroring comes from. This one is a copper leaf that creates like a really subtle blue and also a bubble. Yeah, it's a different material. It's okay. It's all science. I made that up. It's science. It's science.
So how late will you be working tonight?
Well, pretty much done. We close at 5. Yeah.
And then you're here all weekend? Yeah, next 2 days. Yeah. 2 more days.
How long will that stay in there?
That will come out tomorrow. But if I make something bigger, like one of those sculptural piece, that will stay in the kiln for 2 to 3 days. Yeah, but still not much. It's not that crazy.
Yeah.
So are all these helpers aiming to become glass blowers?
All these helpers are glass blowers. So, yeah, you're looking at Sarah Gilbert here with the ponytail on top. That's Gabe Feenan. They're real. They also do this, but they do have their own studios and their own art, their own installations places. They're incredibly talented. They just also happen to love doing this. This is it's hard to make a living as an artist and to have things like health benefits or a 401k. Like, what a great thing. So this can really offer an artist an opportunity to do more creative things. You have finances to be a little bit more flexible. And also one of the perks, this is one of the best hot shops around. So these ovens, if you can see, they have doors on them. We can open up doors so as pieces get bigger, we have a much bigger furnace capacity, so we can hold a lot more molten glass, but also we can work with much larger pieces here. You're looking at part of this hot shop. There's welding studio back there and cold working. So there's a lot of really fantastic things that we can do here that these artists would not be able to afford to do on their own. So an extra perk is on their days off, they can come use this space, which, if you can imagine, thank you, nice to see you. Yeah,